Hello, I'm Terrence Rourke. I'm from Alton, New Hampshire. I'm also the city attorney in your sister city next door, Rochester. So just to let you know, I am a litigator, I am a trial attorney. I'm used to having a podium in front of me. I don't have it. I do have my papers. I'm not going to read off of them. I'm not going to read to you, but I will refer to my notes. So I'm here tonight not just as a candidate for office, but to give you a dire warning. If things continue as they are right now, we are going to lose this race in November. And why are we going to lose this race in November? Because we have apparently learned absolutely nothing from the election of 2016. And we've learned absolutely nothing from the elections over the last 30 years. Because what has happened to the Democratic Party? This was a party that was formed to be the counterbalance on behalf of the people against the concentrated power of banks, corporations, and special interests. But this party of the people, has been co-opted. We've been co-opted by these Rockefeller Republicans who were booted from their own party. And how do you recognize a Rockefeller Republican, guys? How do you know one when you see them? First, they're going to be socially liberal. What does that mean? So they're going to be pro-choice, they're going to be pro-LGBT rights, they're going to be pro-civil rights. But see, that's the hook. That's how they get in. That's how they don't get the door slammed right in their face when they come in. Now, second, what are they? Well, they generally support the social safety net, right? You know, Social Security, Medicare. Oh, but God forbid anyone mentions socialism or government control of service providers. That's where they start to push back. Third, what else do we know about them? They will fight tooth and nail against any regulations of banks in Wall Street. You'll recognize them because these are the guys who are going to say, you know, we need a market-based solution to this problem. And fourth, you're going to know them because they're going to be the last soldier on the field in this war on drugs. They still believe in the war on drugs, and they still believe in the scourge of recreational drug use. And fifth and finally, they're going to support each and every war that comes down the line, especially these ones that are against communism or other perceived radical elements. So if that's what a Rockefeller Republican is, I'm sure that sounds very familiar to you folks. It sounds a lot like the elected Democrats we have in this country. It sounds a lot like the Democratic establishment, and it sounds a lot like candidates in this race. So what are we going to do? How are we going to avert disaster in November? We're going to do it by actually being Democrats and not nominating compromised candidates. And what kind of candidates are we looking for here, folks? Okay, first of all, we need candidates that believe in truly universal, not-for-profit health care as a guaranteed right of citizenship. And for me, that means we move to Medicare for all immediately, and eventually on to a national health system like they have in Britain. That may not be a perfect system, but no one there loses their home, no one goes bankrupt, and no one loses their lives because they got sick. Now we have two candidates in this race who have raised the most money. That's the Illinois' own Maura Sullivan, who you heard from earlier, and our friend Chris Pappas, a corporate director from Manchester. They've raised the most money, and they are the only two candidates in this race who are against Medicare for all. If one of those two is carrying our flag into battle in November, we will lose. Secondly, we need candidates that believe in protecting your pocketbooks and your jobs from the insatiable greed of Wall Street. And when we say insatiable greed, what do we mean insatiable? It can never be sated. It can never be satisfied. These people are making record profits, and yet they want more and more and more. And what have they done recently? They passed a bill, the Bank Lobbyist Act, to gut the protections that are put in place in Dodd-Frank. They had 17 Democratic senators who went along with that vote, including our two senators here from New Hampshire and our state rep next door, Annie Kuster. We need candidates who have the guts to stand up and say, even if you're in your own party, if you're selling us out to international greed, you're not a Democrat and you're not going to get our support anymore. And next, we have to have Democrats who believe that we can rebuild our infrastructure and our manufacturing base and reclaim our lost middle class. And these are Democrats you've heard from before, right? They say, those jobs are lost and they're not coming back. That's a Rockefeller Republican, and don't waste your vote on them. And next, we have these folks who come up here and they talk, foreign policy, this and this. You need to elect the candidates that believe in ending our endless undeclared wars. That means the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the undeclared wars in Syria, and Niger, and Somalia, and everywhere else we're in wars across the world. Because let me tell you something, folks. I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually fought in combat. And what that means is I've seen things that I can't unsee. I've done things that I can't undo. And I have memories that occasionally haunt my waking hours and my sleeping hours that will never dissipate. And I've seen American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines forced to kill innocent people, over 1 million people in Iraq. I've had to see Americans, and I come from a military family. I'm 3rd generation American, 4th generation United States Army artillery. I grew up loving the military, wanted to be a part of that. I got into a war, and we were the bad guys. We weren't the guys in the white hats coming into World War II and World War I. We were the bad guys. You know, that felt terrible. And I never want to see an American put in that position again. We should never commit our troops to war without a declaration of war and without a clear national purpose and a clear way to get out. And finally, we need candidates that want to stop the longest running civil war in American history, the war on drugs. That is a civil war, and the first step to doing that is a full and immediate legalization of marijuana. Because even though these other drugs exist out there, the #1 drug that fuels the drug cartels, particularly in Mexico, is still marijuana. It was a policy that was based on racial and class stereotypes from the beginning, and it hasn't gotten any better. So we need candidates who believe in full legalization of marijuana. So, you know, these things I'm talking about, these policies, what they do is they represent a coherent vision for America, right? Something that people can wrap their heads around, things that people can understand. And that's been the problem with the Democratic Party in recent vintage, right? You're trying to sell a party that is socially liberal in some senses, but is also espousing a laissez-faire capitalism. Who do the people think that appeals to? Who is the person out there that says, I don't have a job, or I'm not getting paid well enough, or I have all this mounting college debt, but I really like laissez-faire capitalism. That's the kind of Democrat I want. Folks, those are Republicans, okay? Those are Republicans. Just because they have a different sheen, and they may or may not agree with us on social issues, it doesn't change the fact that they're Republicans. And this party will continue to lose election after election after election until we see that. Another thing I want to talk about in terms of my candidacy in particular is we have to realize this is a Republican district. Donald Trump won this district. They have a huge advantage against the Democratic Party in terms of registered voters. We're 3rd in this district. It's Republicans, undeclared, and then Democrats. We're not going to be able to win this race without appealing to independents and without appealing to Republicans. So what do I'm as I mentioned before, a war veteran. I've been a state and federal prosecutor. I'm a father, I'm a hunter, and I'm a gun owner. The usual tropes that they use against Democrats as being anti-family, anti-gun, anti-American, the new one, right, is a snowflake. That's the new term they like to use. Those things won't work against me because they don't fit. They don't fit. And we've seen a race out in Pennsylvania a couple months ago where a Democrat won in a district that Trump won by 22 points because he had a very similar profile to me. And when they try to use these usual attacks, it failed. And what did it come down to? You had a corporate Republican running against a New Deal Democrat, and people voted on the issues, and they won. And if we act like Democrats, and we actually go down to Washington and vote the way people Democrats expect to vote, we're not just going to win in New Hampshire, and we're not just going to win these 51-49 elections, and every 4 years we're running for president, we're not going to we have to run the table in these 17 or 18 states because we're going to lose otherwise. If we run in this coherent vision, truly being the People's Party, we will win everywhere. We will win in Idaho, we'll win in Texas, we're going to win in Arizona, we're going to win in Mississippi, and we're certainly going to win in the 1st District of New Hampshire. So I ask you to check me out. I'm actually having a Facebook Live, a virtual town hall this weekend, so grab my handouts over there and check it out so we can have a little bit of a longer discussion. And I'm telling you, folks, this is the election, not just to change America, but to change this party. Because if we don't do it now, who will do it and when? So that's my presentation now, so I'd like to open it up to any questions y'all might have. Yes?
Can you tell me more how you would reconcile your vision for the Democratic Party against attracting independent voters? They seem to be kind of exclusive to each other. So how do you
I disagree. So when you do the polling, you independently poll issues, right? And you separate them from a sort of a liberal or conservative frame or a Democrat Republican frame. These issues that we're talking about, these positions that I was just talking about, the majority of voters agree with them. What they don't agree with is the direction the Democratic Party has gone. So what you see is when an issue is polled, and you poll it just independently, and then you tie it to the Democratic Party, it starts dropping in polls. And then when you tie it to certain Democrats, it goes lower and lower and lower. And again, I would say we've done that to ourselves. So this is the election that we have. This is an opportunity. Donald Trump is an opportunity, folks, to redefine ourselves and to get America back on course. So if we are who we say we are, people are going to know that I agree with this issue. Let's just use, we want to increase the minimum wage, right? That polls really well in New Hampshire, polls great across the country. If people then know that and identify that that's the Democratic Party who supports that, that's going to translate into votes. So that's how you do it. But you got to be true to your issues. You can't have 17 Democrats voting to gut Dodd-Frank and let Wall Street run wild, because then the common man and woman on the street, they say, what does that party even stand for? They claim they stand for the working man, but they're just doing a gigantic giveaway to Wall Street. So it's much more than us having these values here in a room in Somersworth. The people we elect have to have those values, carry them forward, and then actually vote that way. Yes?
So I understand you're painting this Rockefeller Republican, pro-social issues, but fiscally conservative essentially.
Right.
So when you're appealing to, say, independents or Republicans or whatever, are there social issues that you would compromise on? Particularly women's issues, LGBTQ rights issues. Are those places where you're willing to say?
No, and we don't have to, because again, when you poll these issues independently, again, first of all, independents mostly are on our side in these, and even, particularly here in New Hampshire, most Republican voters are on our side in these issues. You don't have to compromise. There's a consensus generally amongst a lot of these issues amongst actual people. I always say this because I'm sure everyone here has friends who are Republicans. The person who's a Republican who lives next door to you, you have to separate them from the elected Republicans. The elected Republicans are completely sold out to the corporate interests, to the NRA, to the religious right and all that. But your average everyday Republican or right-leaning independent who's your neighbor, they don't believe in these things. So again, this is a great opportunity for us is in 2018 to get these people who might normally vote Republican or unfortunately not vote at all, to vote Democrat in this election. And once we get them once, if we stand strong on our principles, we'll keep them in the next election, and the next election, and the next election, and then we're gonna have their kids and their grandchildren. That's how you build a party. It can't be this sort of clown car that gets all revved up right before an election. It has to be a sustained vision for the future for this country. And that's how you'll build and maintain a party and build and maintain a majority. Yes?
As I was listening to you speak, you were talking about getting us out of all of these
Yes.
wars and everything. I'm kind of curious. Are you then suggesting that we become basically a protection, just a nationalist, or just worry about ourselves? Or, for example, what would your position be if, for example, the state of Israel were to be invaded?
Well, that's two different questions. Let's start with the first one. So these wars we're talking about, they're not in the national interest, right? Iraq and Afghanistan, maybe you could have early on made a claim that we're there fighting Al Qaeda. Well, that is not true anymore, and I don't want to spend all night talking about it. But so those wars are not national interests. Again, this isn't fighting Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan. Like, these wars are in the interest of mostly corporations, big oil, big defense. So I am not a pacifist. Okay, that's a different thing. If a war is in our national interest, we have to have it. Let's declare war. Let's mobilize the entire country in that effort. Because right now, the United States military, and I credit my dad for this line, who's also a veteran, we're essentially the Hessians, right? The United States military is at war right now. The United States of America isn't at war. I mean, everyone goes about their lives, and these wars rage on 17 years, 15 years, and it doesn't affect us here in America because America isn't at war. If it's worth going to war over, we need a declaration of war, and the entire country needs to be mobilized to fight the war. So, do you see the sort of the difference there? If it's in our national interest, we should do it, but we should do it right. And Congress needs to reclaim its authority over declaring war. Because right now, we're in the same problem we had when the King of England ran our country, right? One guy is deciding who we go to war with, where we go to war, what units are going to be used to fight that war, and when we leave, if we ever leave, right? That's what happened in this war on terror. Congress has totally forfeited its authority to declare war. The President of the United States was merely supposed to be the head general of the Army and the head admiral of the Navy. That was it. He would follow the orders of Congress. Now those two powers have all come together in one person. This is not just Donald Trump. It was under Bush, W. Bush, and Obama as well. So Congress needs to reclaim that authority to declare war. So, second part of your question was?
Are you suggesting that we no longer have to be, if you want to say, the policeman of the world?
Right. Right, that's not our job, to be the policeman of the world, correct. Sorry. I got to wrap it up, so I'll stick around. I'll be around if anyone has any other questions. And again, Facebook Live, 7 o'clock Friday night. Thank you.